Hey guys, tonight we're brushing aside the haze of nostalgia and stepping straight into a world stickier than a maple syrup factory in July. The real life of a weed dealer in Amsterdam's 1990s coffee shops. And no, not today's polished, Instagram-friendly dispensaries with hemp-printed menus and laminated strain charts. I'm talking about the actual 90s, dial-up internet, chunky sneakers, and Dutch coffee shops, so smoky the air practically had a texture. It was a world where street smarts mattered as much as knowing your reggae, and the only real compliance training was, don't sell to cops, don't sell to kids, and just don't be weird about it. But before we light this story up, if you enjoy drifting off to slightly unhinged history sprinkled with a dash of absurdity, hit that like button, subscribe, and maybe drop a comment with what time it is where you're watching. Now settle in, dim the lights, turn on a fan for that cozy background hum. And think about this. What did dealers actually do before smartphones and payment apps? How did they track their stash? Clipboard? Notebook? Pure vibes? Did they really memorize the difference between Northern Lights and White Widow? Or did they just name things after anything that sounded vaguely magical? Did anyone ever mistake oregano from the lost and found for the real deal? Did the police have a special polite, "we're watching you" voice? Did tourists get the munchies so badly they try to eat a stroopwafel wrapper? And what was it really like running a shop where half your customers walked in looking for Bob Marley, but couldn't remember their hostel address? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1993. The wallpaper is brown. The air is heavier than your neighbor's bass speakers. And you're about to serve your first customer of the day, a very confused tourist holding a Lonely Planet guidebook and the sense of direction of a moth. Good luck. You open your eyes to a sound that could only be described as aggressive Dutch pigeon. The ceiling above you is peeling. Your futon is sunken, and there's the comforting scent of yesterday's incense. This morning's coffee and a lingering note of mystery herb. Congratulations. You live above a bicycle repair shop, and your rent is only slightly higher than your sense of impending existential dread. Let's talk about your apartment, the humble kingdom, over a bicycle repair shop in a part of Amsterdam that's just far enough from the tourist traps to feel local, but close enough that you hear drunken backpackers attempt to sing Wonderwall every Friday at 2 a.m. Your room is just big enough to contain the essentials. A futon with the support structure of a wet napkin. A rickety table covered in a chessboard pattern of rolling papers and unmatched socks. And a single window with a view of the alley that on a good day smells like pastry. And on a bad day, like someone invented a new cheese, the soundtrack of your morning is a blend of noises. The soft mechanical whirring of a 100 bicycle wheels being repaired below. Your upstairs neighbor's clogs on hardwood, and the aforementioned pigeon, who by all laws of physics and morality should not be able to produce that much volume. Every now and then you hear a customer downstairs already arguing about whether a flat tire is covered under warranty. As if anyone in the 1990s ever read a warranty in Dutch, English, or otherwise. You're not exactly living the high life, unless you count the literal sense. There's no dishwasher. The toilet is down the hall and shared with the world's least apologetic jazz saxophagist. And your kitchen consists of a hot plate and a kettle with an existential leak. Your fridge is a study in international relations. Half a bottle of Geneva, a package of cheese that's more blue than yellow, and at least one Tupperware container that will probably become sentient before you work up the courage to open it. You briefly consider breakfast. Then remember the laws of nature. If it crunches and isn't cereal, don't eat it. But on the upside, the rent is by Amsterdam standards only moderately outrageous. The shop owner downstairs knocks off 50 guilders a month if you agree to water his dying plants and keep an eye on the alley for bike thieves who legend says are both everywhere and nowhere at once. Every so often you get a free tire patch kit as a bonus, which is almost as useful as a warm hug, but slightly less satisfying. Morning routines here are about lowering your expectations and embracing the quirks. You brush your teeth with cold water from the tap, mentally promising yourself that today you'll finally buy a shower curtain. The shower itself is a curious marvel, a closet-sized cubicle with hot water that runs out faster than your patience during Queen's Day. The curtain, which you still haven't purchased, is replaced by a sacrificial bath towel that's seen things no textile should ever see. Of course, no Amsterdam dealer's apartment is complete without the stash spot. Yours is a hollowed-out copy of a French novel that no one ever actually reads. You keep a modest supply, enough to avoid suspicion, not enough to attract the sort of attention that requires a phone call to your cousin in Rotterdam every now and then. You worry you've hidden your stash too well, and briefly panic before remembering that yes, it's always behind Liberty PR. You've never finished that book, but it's never let you down. From your window, you watch the city wake up. There's a gentle parade of bicycles, school children in uniforms, shopkeepers setting out displays, and the canal boats gliding by like lazy ducks. You inhale the crisp air, equal parts fresh and, well, herbaceous. And remember that despite the existential chaos, there's something peaceful about living in a place where everyone is just a little bit eccentric. Eventually, you gear up for the day. You rifle through your pile of clothes on the chair, your only closet, pick out the least wrinkled shirt, and check your pockets for loose change, rolling papers, and the ever-mysterious lighter that disappears twice a week. The air is thick with possibility. Or maybe that's just the neighbor's incense drifting through the vents again. And as you lock your door and head downstairs, dodging the world's boldest pigeon, you realize this isn't the apartment of your dreams, but it's the perfect launch pad for another day in Amsterdam's hazy, hilarious, never boring coffee shop life. Choosing your outfit is a delicate balance between, will this hide ash stains and how many pockets can I cram snacks into? Fashion in 1993 means loose jeans, suspiciously tie-dye t-shirts, and a jacket you could lose a house cat in. Looking sharp isn't a goal. Blending in with the sofa is morning in your apartment, the air still thick with incense and the faint hint of last night's rolling tobacco. You confront the sacred pile of laundry that doubles as both wardrobe and laundry basket. You try to recall when you last washed anything, but Amsterdam's humid air blurs the memory. And anyway, Breeze hasn't made it to your side of the canal. Every item in your collection carries the scars of coffee shop living, faded seams, mysterious burn holes, and at least one ink stain in the exact shape of a regrettable life decision. There are really only 3 rules for dressing as a weed dealer in 1990s Amsterdam. First, pockets. The more the better. If you can't carry 2 lighters, a notebook, rolling papers, a sandwich, and loose change for stroopwafels, you're not ready for work. Your best jacket has the structural integrity of a parachute and enough hidden compartments to qualify as minor smuggling infrastructure. At least one pocket you know from experience will contain a lighter you thought you lost 2 weeks ago and a button from a shirt you no longer own. Second, camouflage. Not camouflage as in military chic, but camouflage as in if I spill coffee or someone flicks ash at me, no one will ever know. This is the real genius behind the Amsterdam stoner aesthetic. Patterns so busy that stains are just part of the look. Tie-dye is popular, but you've also got the option of grunge flannel, vintage windbreakers, or anything with an abstract print that doubles as both an art statement and an alibi. Third, comfort. Nobody expects a weed dealer to be runway ready, and that's a good thing because your jeans are so baggy that at least 2 local shop cats have taken naps in the cuffs. The fabric is soft, well-worn, and one size larger than you remember by. You slide into a t-shirt with a logo for a band that may or may not actually exist, a relic from some music festival that you vaguely recall attending in '91. Over that, you throw on the jacket so full of crumpled receipts and loose change, it could double as a piñata for nostalgic 20-somethings. Socks are an optional luxury. If you can find a matching pair, it's a minor miracle. Shoes, on the other hand, must be sturdy enough for biking, resistant to rain, and ideally waterproof. Because in Amsterdam, wet feet is a daily lifestyle, not just a weather event. Most days, you settle for battered sneakers that look like they survived a flood and maybe a small fire. They probably did. You catch your reflection in the mirror, if you can call a mirror, since it's cracked and foggy from last night's hot shower divided by steam experiment, and consider briefly whether you look professional. The answer is always no. But that's the point. The goal is to be forgettable. Not the tame, coolest person in the room, to someone who's clearly been around the block and possibly around the block several times at 3 a.m. searching for a kebab shop that's still open. You stuff a beanie into your jacket, just in case the rain picks up or your hair decides to wage war with gravity. In one hand, you clutch the essentials. Keys, a crumpled grocery list, and a single glove whose mate has vanished into the void where lost socks and dignity go. The finishing touch. Sunglasses. Not because it's sunny. This is Amsterdam after all. But because you never know when you'll need to shield your eyes from fluorescent lights, suspiciously curious customers, or the blinding glare of your own questionable choices. Before heading out, you do a quick pocket check. The Amsterdam dealer's version of a security sweep. Lighter, check. Rolling papers, check. Wallet, somewhere. At least one snack item, absolutely. A pen for jotting down orders, strange quotes, or the next great weed. Stray name always. If you've made it this far without losing your bus pass or your sense of irony, you're dressed and ready for another unpredictable day behind the counter. And with that, you step out, blending seamlessly with the living room upholstery of the coffee shop world. A walking tribute to comfort, chaos, and maximum snack accessibility. You leap onto your city bike, which is technically only half yours. The brakes squeal, the seat wobbles, and every canal breeze brings a new old factory experience. This is the fastest, most dangerous, and frankly most Dutch way to get to work, dodging tourists, trams, and the occasional misplaced cheese wheel. It's early morning, and the city is already alive with the sound of thousands of bicycle bells chiming like an enthusiastic but out-of-tune orchestra. You are now part of Amsterdam's most sacred ritual, the daily migration of two-wheeled warriors. You're not alone. Around you, office workers in sensible raincoats, students balancing stacks of books and grandmas with grocery baskets pedal past with a calm that suggests they've been doing this since Rembrandt was in short pants. Your own bike is a vintage clunker with a chain that threatens mutiny every other block. The paint is flaking. The handlebars are wrapped in electrical tape, and the front light dangles at an angle that only lights up your left shoe. It's borrowed in the sense that you traded your old Walkman for it. But in Amsterdam, bike ownership is more of a concept than a reality. If you can ride it, and it doesn't burst into flames, it's yours for now. Every journey to the coffee shop is an adventure in urban obstacle courses. Your first challenge is the cobblestones. Charming for tourists. Absolute ankle assassins for cyclists. Next up, the trams. Gleaming blue and white juggernauts that glide silently until you're suddenly in a staring contest with the driver. You learn to swerve, to time your pedal strokes with ninja precision, and to never ever get stuck in the tram tracks. Unless you're looking to experience the sensation of being airborne, briefly followed by humiliation as you navigate the city. The air is thick with the mingled smells of bakery fresh bread, canal water, and whatever the street vendor is frying this morning. Every corner brings something new. The floral blast of tulip stalls, the spicy aroma from a Surinamese deli, the sharp tang of canal algae, and sometimes, unfortunately, the very distinctive signature of a garbage day gone wrong. You take a deep breath and try to focus on the bread. Of course, there are other cyclists to contend with. Amsterdam cyclists are an elite class of urban gladiators. No helmets, no fear, and a sixth sense for dodging everything from small children to small dogs on leashes longer than the average legal document. The rules are simple. Keep moving. Ring your bell. And try not to make eye contact with a businessman who is definitely late for a meeting and riding as if his life depends on it. Sometimes you pass a group of American tourists on rented bikes, their faces set in rich terror as they try to remember whether they're supposed to be on the left, the right, or just anywhere that isn't the canal. Speaking of canals, they are your ever-present companions. Every turn brings a glint of water, a flash of houseboat, a flock of ducks judging you from beneath a bridge. Occasionally, someone's bad day has ended with a bike in the water, a silent warning from Neptune, god of lost security deposits. You make a mental note to always lock your bike to something more permanent than no parking sign. Midway through the commute, the weather decides to express itself. One moment, the sun is shining, and the next, a cloud bursts like a piñata full of disappointment. Rain jacket optional. It's the 90s. Your jacket is only waterproof in theory, and your bag is already absorbing moisture faster than you can pedal. You press on, water streaking your glasses, jeans growing heavier by the second. You tell yourself, this is invigorating and very European. Even as you imagine your socks evolving into a new life form, you finally approach your destination. The coffee shop's crooked green sign comes into view, promising warmth, caffeine, and the familiar musk of 1,000 rolled joints. You lock your bike, wondering if it will still be here when you get off shift, and if not, whose problem that will be tomorrow. You step off, stretch your legs, and realize for all the chaos and canal-related hazards, you wouldn't trade this commute for any car, bus, or taxi. It's dangerous, unpredictable, and uniquely yours. Welcome to Amsterdam, where the only thing more Dutch than a bike commute is complaining about a bike commute while biking. Arriving early, you fumble with a ring of keys big enough to anchor a small boat. The door opens, and the scent of 40 years of herbal history slaps you in the face. There's a ritual here. Open windows, light incense, and greet the resident shop cat, who definitely has opinions on your life choices. It's quiet almost. The street is just waking up, and you're the first to break the night spell. There's a unique stillness in an Amsterdam coffee shop before the chaos begins. A sense that the ghosts of all-night conversations, reggae echoes, and arguments over whose turn it is to buy rolling papers are still hovering in the air. You step inside, setting off the little bell above the door, a sound that's become your morning soundtrack, along with the subtle crunch of yesterday's crumbs underfoot and the low, judgmental meow of Marmalade, the shop cat. Marmalade has seen things. Legend has it he's older than the coffee shop itself, possibly immortal, and almost certainly plotting to overthrow management one day. His domain stretches from the warm spot atop the espresso machine to the secret lair behind the beanbag chairs where lost lighters and half-eaten stroopwafels go to die. You dutifully scratch his chin, mutter a promise to bring him real tuna one of these days, and he rewards you with the same look your high school guidance counselor once gave you. A blend of pity, tolerance, and faint hope you'll do better today. Keys in hand, you start the sacred ritual. First, windows open to let out the ghosts of 100 joints smoked, and more urgently to keep the air inspector from fainting if he walks by. The Amsterdam breeze with its unmistakable notes of canal pastry and ambition rolls in, mixing with a lingering herbal essence until the place smells almost normal, or at least legal. Next, incense. Not for vibes, but for survival. You rifle through the drawer and pull out a stick that's labeled something suspiciously generic, like Himalayan sunrise. Light it and let it compete with the residual aromas for dominance. In moments, the room transforms into a spa for people with questionable sleep schedules. You briefly consider adding a plug-in air freshener, but remember last time it set off a customer's allergies and started a half-hour rant about chemicals and the pineal gland. You decide to risk it with incense alone. You take stock of the battlefield. Glass jars lined up behind the counter, half full, labels slightly askew. After last night's rush, A few coffee cups stacked in the sink. One sporting a lipstick mark. Another an unidentifiable sticky residue that you sincerely hope is syrup. The bar stools are askew. One cushion is on the floor, and there's a mysterious sticky spot you'll deal with after your first coffee. Or never. You do a mental inventory. Hash in the locked drawer. Rolling papers in the display. And the all-important special menu tucked discreetly behind the regular one. The old cash register greets you with a reluctant clunk when you try to open it, and you eye the tip jar, currently occupied by 3 guilders, a Canadian quarter, and for some reason, a guitar pick. As you go through the motions, you notice the sunlight creeping in, illuminating the wood grain of the counter, and making the dust motes dance like tiny disco balls. There's a strange serenity to this part of the day. The stillness is fragile, like the moment before a record drops. It's your time, just you, the shop cat, and the quiet murmur of Amsterdam outside. A knock at the window. The first regular, early as ever, give you a half salute and waits for your signal. But you're not ready to break the spell yet. There's still one ritual left. The playlist. You thumb through a stack of tapes. Bob Marley, Portishead, and a bootleg compilation labeled Tony's Best Mix 91-92. You choose reggae because that's how mornings start here. The bass line rolls out as familiar as your own heartbeat. You take one last deep breath. The shop is open. The air is freshish, and Marmalade has retreated to judge humanity from his perch. Why, ready for whatever comes through the door next. Jet-lagged tourists, philosophical locals, or someone looking for that one strain with a funny name. The city is awake, and so are you. And if the shop isn't perfect, that's fine. Perfection isn't the goal, just a place where everyone is welcome. The coffee is strong, and there's always one cat who's just a little too smug. Stocking up means opening glass jars, peering inside, and wondering if this particular nug is purple haze or just whatever's left from last week. There's a lot of weighing, sniffing, and quietly pretending you can tell the difference between 5 similar smelling bags. Welcome to one of the least glamorous and most quietly stressful rituals of your job, the daily inventory. Forget spreadsheets, barcode scanners, or anything even remotely digital. In 1990s Amsterdam, inventory control is a vibe-based system heavily reliant on your nose, your memory, and an optimistic approach to labeling. Every morning you confront the counter, an impressive but slightly disorganized parade of glass jars, each with its own personality and questionable backstory. Some labels are works of art. Others are curling scraps of masking tape marked with what might be strain names or just creative descriptions like Dream Fuel, Bob's Fave, or The Cryptic. You start by popping open the first jar. With a final flourish, you seal the joint, twist the end, and hold it up to the light. The crowd nods in appreciation, or at least in anticipation. You produce the finished joint with a magician's reveal. Sometimes applause breaks out. More often, someone squints and asks if you can make it fatter next time. The regulars expect perfection, but they also expect speed. In the time it takes most people to find the sticky side of the paper, you've already rolled 3, passed them out, and started cleaning the grinder for the next round. Of course, it doesn't always go smoothly. Papers tear, filters collapse. The world's most judgmental shop cat leaps onto your lap mid-roll, scattering carefully measured bud across your jeans. Or you find yourself mid-demonstration for a table of international students, suddenly aware that everyone is filming on grainy 90s camcorders hoping for that viral joint fails moment. You keep rolling, pretending not to notice. You develop little tricks, rolling 2 at once for the breakfast rush, inventing clever names for misshapen creations. It's a rustic Dutch twist, and always keeping an emergency pre-roll or 2 in your secret stash for when the pressure is truly on. And while the act is routine, every joint is unique, a small, fragile masterpiece destined for a brief, glorious existence. By noon, your fingers are sticky. Your pride is intact mostly, and you've helped at least one backpacker overcome their irrational fear of filter tips. The act of rolling becomes meditative, a moment where the world narrows to paper herb and the gentle hope that this one will be the best of the day. When you finally get a break, you glance at your hands dusted with kef and pride. Rolling isn't just a job. It's a little bit of everyday magic. And on those rare days when someone says, "Wow, that's perfect," you can't help but smile, tuck your rolling papers back in your pocket, and prepare for the next trick. Because in a 1990s Amsterdam coffee shop, the show never really ends. No one actually reads the menu, but they all want a detailed description. This one is earthy, uplifting, slightly citrus, perfect for people who have opinions about jazz. Half the time you just make it up and hope no one notices. The menu board is an ever-evolving monument to ambiguity, artistic license, and occasionally outright guesswork. Each morning you rewrite a handful of strain names in colorful chalk, erasing last night's sold-out marks with the edge of your sleeve. It's a creative act somewhere between crafting a wine list and naming paint swatches at a discount hardware store. Purple Passion, White Widow Mystery Blend No. 7. You add a few stars or a doodle for flair. Nobody's fooled, but everyone appreciates the effort. Despite your best efforts, almost no one walks in and just points to the menu. Instead, they want to know which one won the cannabis cup, which one's best for nervous energy, or which strain is good for a first-timer who's also slightly afraid of birds. Your job isn't just to serve. It's to channel your inner sommelier and improv coach. Sometimes the truth is a moving target. You launch into descriptions with the confidence of a man who's only had coffee for breakfast. This one's got bright top notes, very mellow. Think reading a book by candlelight vibes. Or this has a classic Amsterdam flavor. Rich, robust, great for staring at canal water and pondering your life decisions. Customers nod, try to look discerning as if they'll be quizzed later. Regulars catch on to the routine and play along. The artist in the window might request whatever's best for painting upside down. The Dilla man insists he needs something cerebral, like the one I smoked with Bob at 75. Students request the cheapest thing that doesn't taste like pencil shavings. Some customers want something that'll make time slow down. It always does. While others specifically request something that won't make time slow down, it never listens. You quickly become an expert in reading facial expressions. The nervous tourist, the overly confident Brit, the local who's just here for the company and the coffee. For each you invent a story for the strains, weaving tales about origins in the Moroccan mountains or the mysterious friend in Rotterdam who grew it. Using nothing but moonlight and positive thinking, you speak with authority about tarpan. Even if you're not exactly sure whether that's an actual thing or just something you heard from the boss last week. Every now and then a customer asks a question that tests your creative boundaries. Which one makes colors look more vibrant, but not too vibrant? Or do you have a strain that's good for writing breakup letters? You nod sagely, pointing to a jar and declaring, "This is the one for seeing the world as a music video from 1983. They buy it every time. Meanwhile, you keep an eye on the actual supply. Half the jars behind the counter are mislabeled, either through honest mistake, the results of last night's rush, or the secret chaos of inventory day. You silently vow to update the labels later, right after you've solved world peace and found the end of the roll of tape. But as long as you say it with confidence, nobody questions you. That's the secret of the menu board. Conviction. If you believe in the story, so does the customer. Sometimes you scribble a new strain on the board just for fun. Wizard's Nap. Sunday afternoon special. Mona Lisa smile. The regulars wink, order it, and leave happy, convinced that whatever they smoked was indeed exactly what they needed. By late afternoon, the board is smudged, half erased, and somehow even more cryptic than before. Newcomers still ask for descriptions, and you deliver them with the same enthusiasm as your first customer of the day. You know that at the end of it all, it's not about the accuracy of the description, but the shared experience, The moment when everyone at the counter is united by the possibility of the perfect high. So you keep inventing, keep describing, keep pretending that you too can tell the difference between earthy undertones and tastes like Amsterdam rain. Because in the world of 1990s coffee shops, the menu board is whatever you need it to be. Guidebook, legend, or just a chalk-stained portal to a gentler, weirder reality. The hunger hits. You disappear into the back room, return with something that might be a sandwich, and realize you have a dusting of powdered sugar on your face for the rest of the shift. The real challenge is not eating the customer's snacks by accident in the 1990s Amsterdam coffee shop. Eating is an improvisational sport, a daily adventure conducted in the narrow window between customers, deliveries, and the existential panic that sets in when you realize you haven't eaten anything not wrapped in cellophane since last Tuesday. Your stomach's internal clock ignores the official break schedule, choosing instead to send urgent reminders at the precise moment you're explaining the difference between hash and weed to a confused Canadian backpacker. The first rule of Munchie mission speed: if you can't grab it, eat it, and swallow before the next round of customers stumbles in. You're destined to survive on coffee alone. A heavy cloud escapes, dense enough to disorient small mammals. This one's strong, definitely, but whether it's Northern Lights or Afghan hash is anyone's guess. You take a deep inhale, nod wisely, and make a mental note to describe it to customers later as earthy mellow with top notes of existential dread. The scale sits on the counter, a chunky digital relic that sometimes needs a slap on the side to display the right numbers. You try to remember if the batteries are dying or if the ghost of coffee shop owners past is haunting the electronics. Either way, it's more of an art than a science. You start weighing out portions for the day's trade, careful to keep everything within the legal limits. Amsterdam's rules are a little like the city's street map, logical on paper, but full of confusing twists, blind alleys, and sudden dead ends if you aren't paying attention. You scoop buds, shake them gently into little plastic bags, and occasionally pause to wonder if the difference between White Widow and whatever was in the bottom drawer is mostly a matter of confidence. Each jar gets the ceremonial sniff test. You swirl the jar, hold it up to the light, and squint like a wine slayer, searching for hints of blackberry or that one time at summer camp. Your ability to keep a straight face is tested daily, especially when the boss walks in and asks you to rank the inventory from most to least energetic. Occasionally, you hit a mystery jar, something with a label so faded it could say Mundere or Monday. You open it, give it a cautious whiff, and immediately forget what you were looking for. You decide it's best to combine it with a mixed stash, a perpetual backup for regulars who claim they want whatever's cheapest, but like special. You remind yourself to update the labels, then promptly forget, which is also part of the ritual. There's a side quest to this inventory game, making everything look appealing. You fluff the buds, arrange them just so, and swap out the most anemic-looking sample for something fresher. Presentation counts for more than you'd think, especially when half your customers are amateur botanists who read High Times once and now believe they're experts on trichomes. You develop a patter. Yes, this one's got great density and aroma. Very uplifting. Perfect for canal walks or forgetting your pen at the grocery store. Meanwhile, the hash menu gets its own side of the counter. Hash is a different beast. Sticky, malleable, and requiring its own set of techniques. You cut, weigh, and wrap little bricks, careful to keep your fingers from sticking together like Velcro. Sometimes the boss insists on doing this part, muttering that you don't respect the tradition, but you know he just likes licking his fingers afterward. As you work, Marmalade the cat circles your ankles, sniffing the air with the practiced disdain of someone who's seen too much. He settles on a bar stool and watches you work, judgmental as ever. You're not sure if he's critiquing your technique or just waiting for you to drop something edible. Inventory finished. You line up the jars behind the counter, a gleaming display of color, texture, and probable legal gray area. You double-check the numbers, close up the lockbox, and wipe your hands on a towel that was cleaned sometime last week. With the sun now streaming through the windows and the first regulars trickling in, you breathe a sigh of relief. Inventory complete, or at least complete enough for another day in the world's most relaxed retail operation. And if anyone asks what that one jar in the back is, you just smile and say, that's a house secret. Because in 1990s Amsterdam, sometimes the best inventory strategy is a little mystery and a lot of confidence. The first customers stumble in as soon as you flip the sign. Some are jet-lagged, some are up all night, and all of them ask the same question. What's the strongest thing you've got? You prepare your best. Let me consult my imaginary menu face. The air is still crisp from the morning's incense, and you haven't even made it through your first coffee. The city outside is only half awake. But inside the shop, the day kicks off with a parade of early risers who all seem to have a different relationship with time and space. Some clutch their guidebooks like life rafts, eyes wide with the energy of someone who just landed in Europe and can't believe this place is real. Others wear last night's party as a badge of honor. Sunglasses indoors and hair that looks like it just lost a fight with a ceiling fan. The Amsterdam coffee shop early shift is a study in anthropology. There's the solo traveler who barely speaks but points confidently at the menu, and then quietly asks if you can recommend something that makes music sound like a warm bath. Next comes a cluster of friends who operate as a single entity, giggling and nudging each other, as if the most dangerous thing in the world would be ordering alone. Their requests are always urgent, always slightly cryptic, something that doesn't make me too hungry, but like also very hungry, you know? Then there's the philosopher. He's been up all night wandering the canals in existential dread fueled by too much espresso and a playlist of sad French pop songs. He'll ask for whatever makes you see new perspectives. And when you hand him a pre-rolled joint, he'll ask you about the nature of happiness while you're still trying to find the till. Every now and then, you'll get a seasoned local slipping in before work, asking for the usual, which is always a little bit of whatever everyone else ignored yesterday. These customers are both the easiest and the hardest. Easy because you know what they want. Hard because they will definitely tell you if you accidentally switch the mellow with the face melter. You hand them their order with a wink and a nod, sharing a moment of camaraderie only possible between people who both survived Dutch winters and the 1980s. Tourists, however, are a breed apart. They come in expecting magic and leave impressed by just how confusing the menu is. There's always one who asks for the stuff Snoop Dogg smokes, and another who's deeply concerned about the legality of the entire operation. You explain the rules in your best. I'm not a lawyer, but I've had this conversation 500 times. Voice. No, you can't take it outside. No, you can't ship it home. Yes, you're allowed to buy it. No, I will not sign your customs form. Some requests are even stranger. Do you have anything organic, gluten-free, and good for anxiety about small dogs? Or, what's the best weed for writing poetry? You channel your inner sommelier and describe the strains like rare wines. This one has earthy undertones and is great for creative projects. Unless your project is getting off the couch, in which case I'd avoid it. They nod with the seriousness of someone buying a new mattress, and you silently hope they remember which one you handed them. As the morning picks up, so do the stories. Someone wants something that won't make me paranoid like last time. Someone else asks for a blend that tastes like sunshine. You smile, scoop, and weigh. Always ready to offer orange juice or a sympathetic ear if a first-timer takes one puff too many. Part therapist, part barista, you help them navigate the fine line between adventure and accidental nap. Through it all, the early crowd brings a kind of energy you've grown to love. There's anticipation in the air, the sense that the day is still unwritten and anything, good conversation, a new friend, a gentle hi, or at least a decent muffin could happen. You never know if the person you serve will become a regular, a story, or a cautionary tale for the next shift. By the time the clock inches past 10 a.m., The parade of early birds starts to blend into the late morning rush. You wipe down the counter, restock the tip jar, and prepare yourself for the next wave. Because in 1990s Amsterdam, every day starts with a question and a chance to see what kind of weird, wonderful requests will walk through the door. Some customers are so familiar they might as well pay rent. There's the artist with paint on his shoes, the college kid who never actually leaves, and that one elderly man who tells the same story about Bob Dylan every single morning. In every Amsterdam coffee shop, there exists a pantheon of regulars, a cast of characters so constant and comfortable in their chosen seats that you wonder if the furniture was built around them. They shuffle in at the same time every day, often before the chairs are even warm, laying claim to their spot with the authority of royalty and the efficiency of people who never have to ask where the bathroom is. Take the artist, for example. He arrives precisely 15 minutes after you unlock the door, trailing the scent of turpentine, and carrying a satchel stuffed with sketchbooks, half-eaten sandwiches, and possibly a pigeon or two. His shoes are abstract masterpieces in their own right, streaked with paint splatters and colors that haven't existed since the early 80s. He claims his usual table by the window, orders a black coffee and whatever is freshest, and spends the next 3 hours quietly judging the cloud formations and the existential crisis unfolding in his mug. Occasionally, he'll sketch the customers, offering you a quick doodle in exchange for a free refill or a particularly satisfying hash brownie. You have a growing collection of napkin portraits behind the counter, tiny tributes to a life well observed. Then there's the student, the perpetual resident. Nobody knows what he studies, or even if he's actually enrolled at the university. He claims a corner booth as his personal fortress surrounded by battered textbooks, half-rolled cigarettes, and a rotating cast of equally sleep-deprived friends. He is present at every hour at 10 a.m. with a philosophy book, at 4 o'clock p.m. with a chess set, and at midnight when he's either working on a thesis or debating the meaning of life with a potted plant by the bathroom. You're pretty sure he's received more mail at the shop than you have at your apartment. And of course, the Dylan Man. Every morning, without fail, he sits at the bar, orders a small coffee, and launches into his tale about the time he saw Bob Dylan play in a smoke-filled room, just like this one. He remembers every detail with the selective clarity of someone who's been telling the same story for 20 years. You know the punchlines by heart, but you let him have his moment because the shop wouldn't feel right without his raspy laugh echoing off the walls. Some days a newcomer will listen wide-eyed as if the story might end differently this time. Spoiler, it never does. Other regulars fill in the spaces. A retired school teacher who does crossword puzzles in pen. A local florist who brings in day-old tulips to brighten the counter, and the city's only mime who comes in twice a week to order the invisible special. You always hand him an empty cup, and he tips with imaginary coins. These regulars become the rhythm of the shop, the backbone that keeps things steady when the waves of tourists crash in and out. You know their orders, their birthdays, and which of them need extra sugar or a gentle reminder that the ashtray is in fact not a plant pot. They are both your most loyal critics and your biggest champions, ready to defend the honor of the shop against any outsider who dares to complain about the music or question the cats right to sit on the counter. They teach you things you'd never learn anywhere else. How to fold a paper crane from a receipt, how to brew a cup of coffee the right way, and the best route home on a rainy night. Sometimes when the day is slow, they'll help you restock the shelves or mop up the inevitable spill, pausing only to impart unsolicited life advice that's either deeply profound or just slightly unhinged. When you work in a coffee shop long enough, you realize these local legends are what make the place home. They're the reason you look forward to unlocking the door every morning, even if you know you'll hear that Dylan story again before your shift is over. And honestly, the day wouldn't be complete without it. You roll joints like an anxious magician at a children's birthday party, distracting, slightly sweaty, and with a flourish that impresses only the least sober in the room. There's a secret satisfaction in a perfectly rolled cone. Even if your fingers are now permanently sticky, rolling is an art and a survival skill. A daily performance in dexterity, calm, and sheer improvisational genius. At any given moment, someone is watching you. Maybe a wide-eyed tourist who's never rolled anything more complicated than a burrito, or a regular who claims he once rolled joints for Keith Richards and critiques your every move with the solemnity of a Michelin food critic. The pressure is on. The papers are out. The bud is ground. The audience holds its collective breath. The process begins with selection. You reach for the best papers, always making sure to choose the uncrumpled ones. Never underestimate the power of crisp rolling paper. You pinch a little filter from a cardboard scrap, a business card, a tram ticket, or if you're desperate, the corner of a coffee shop menu. The filter is rolled with surgeon-like precision. Even though your hands are shaking from the triple espresso, you had to survive the morning rush. You spread out the herb, trying to distribute it evenly, which is easier said than done. The goal is a perfect blend of not too tight, not too loose, just enough to burn evenly. Not so much that the joint looks like a snake that ate a bicycle. Someone always interrupts at the worst moment. Is it true Bob Marley could roll a joint with one hand? You don't look up. You know better than to tempt fate during the critical tuck and roll phase. Rolling itself is a test of your nerves. You slide the paper back and forth, coaxing the herb into a neat line, tucking the edge with your thumbs and forefingers, and praying the humidity won't turn the paper to mush. Someone in the corner makes a drum roll on the table. You resist the urge to throw the joint at them. Licking the glue strip is a ritual unto itself. It's not just about moisture. It's about timing, confidence, and not letting your tongue stick to the paper like you're auditioning for a slapstick comedy. The coffee shop back room is a graveyard of half-eaten hopes and dreams. There's a shelf with exactly 3 kinds of food: stroopwafels, pre-packaged sandwiches, and the eternal question mark that is yesterday's leftovers. Stroopwafels, those syrup-filled Dutch wonders, are the unofficial fuel of the Amsterdam cannabis industry. You can eat them by the stack or just nibble on the edges while pretending to be busy wiping down tables. Each bite delivers a powerful sugar rush, immediately followed by the sticky-fingered regret of not bringing a napkin. Some days you finish a whole pack before noon and wonder why your hands keep sticking to the cash register. Then there are the sandwiches. Each one comes wrapped in wax paper with a mystery filling that could be cheese, ham, egg, or if the gods are smiling, something vaguely resembling tuna. The ingredients are never quite what the label suggests. Vegetarian might include a suspiciously meaty slice of something, and ham and cheese sometimes skips the ham entirely. You eat them anyway, comforted by the fact that whatever you're ingesting is at least marginally better than last week's experimental croquette from the corner snack bar. You soon learn to eat defensively. The shop is a high-trade zone for both customers and local wildlife, including the shop cat Marmalade, who is convinced that every sandwich is a shared project. It's not uncommon to take a bite, say your lunch down to help a customer, and return to find a suspicious whisker embedded in your bread. You try to look unfazed, but everyone knows the cat runs this place. Of course, snacks aren't just for you. The real minefield is distinguishing between your food and the customers. In a haze-filled room, ownership gets murky. You once accidentally took a bite of someone's muffin, only to realize your mistake when they return from the restroom with a look of betrayal usually reserved for soap operas. Since then, you label everything. Initials on cups, doodles on napkins, and passive-aggressive sticky notes. Not yours, probably. Sometimes it works. The munchies are contagious. A customer will order a brownie, and within minutes, everyone, including you, feels the gravitational pull of the snack display. There's a rhythm to it. One joint, one sweet, a strong hash, maybe 2. It's not long before the counter is dusted with crumbs. and the air smells of melted caramel and warm bread. When the afternoon slump hits, you find yourself daydreaming about the forbidden fruit, the special cakes reserved for tourists. But you remember the last time you tried one. Let's just say you spent 3 hours contemplating the existence of spoons. Sometimes a local will bring in a treat from home, apple pie, stroopwafels, or on a good day, a tub of peanut butter cookies. Sharing is tradition. You join the communal snack circle, breaking bread or waffle and telling stories. It's the simplest joy, a rare moment of calm in the whirlwind of orders and existential questions. No matter how strange the day gets, food grounds you. A shared sandwich, a stolen bite of someone's stroopwafel, even a laugh over who stole whose lunch. These are the moments that make the shop feel like home. By the end of your shift, your energy is a patchwork of caffeine, sugar, and the lingering hope that dinner will involve actual vegetables. You wipe the powdered sugar from your face, promise yourself you'll pack a salad tomorrow, and then unwrap one last stroopwafel for the road. Because in Amsterdam's coffee shop universe, surviving the day is all about mastering the munchy mission one bite at a time. Technically, you're not supposed to sell to anyone under 18. You can't advertise, and you're only allowed to have a certain amount on the premises. The police stroll by, smile politely, and remind you that this entire arrangement is both totally legal and not legal at all. Welcome to the shadowy ballet of Dutch coffee shop law in the 1990s. A world where everything operates under a set of rules that are at once crystal clear, absolutely vague, and enforced with the gentle confusion of a substitute teacher on the last day of school. You memorize the rules early. No hard drugs, no sales to minors, no giant neon get your weed here banners, and definitely no backroom deals, except of course the kind that everyone knows about but pretends not to see. Every shift you play a silent game of cat and mouse with bureaucracy. The front of the house, all incense and reggae and baked goods, looks inviting enough, but behind the counter, you keep one eye on the clock and another on your daily inventory, making sure the magic number of grams never creeps above the legal limit. Too much on the shelf, that's a fine, a lecture, and possibly an awkward photo in the local paper. Too little, and you risk being the shop that ran out. A fate worse than closing for renovations. The law, you discover, is both your shield and your sword. Technically, the police could walk in and ask for control at any time. In practice, they stop by for coffee and to say hi to Marmalade, the resident cat. Every now and then, an officer will glance around with a look that says, "I see you. You see me. Let's both pretend we're not here." It's like living in an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Only everyone is a little more relaxed about the paperwork. Every so often, rumors of a crackdown float through the coffee shop grapevine. Someone knows someone whose friend's cousin's shop got a visit from the authorities and had to close for a week. Something about too many edibles or not enough signage or the world's most intense carding sting. You spend the next 2 days nervously checking ID for everyone, including a woman who's clearly old enough to remember the moon landing and a tourist who swears his passport is somewhere. Just give me a minute. The rules change constantly. A living document subject to the whims of local government and national politics. Is it okay to sell weed to Germans on a Tuesday? Can you allow dogs, but only if they're smaller than the shop cat? No one is quite sure. You develop a system of plausible deniability and polite shrugs, delivering the most popular phrase in Amsterdam. Sorry, that's not allowed. Even advertising is a gray area. A menu in the window? Absolutely not. A menu behind the counter decorated with cartoon clouds and smiley faces. Perfectly fine. Word of mouth is your best marketing tool. That, and the universal truth that anyone who smells something herbal in a 200 m radius will eventually find their way to your door. Flyers are forbidden, but matchbooks and business cards handed out with a wink are somehow okay. Behind the scenes, suppliers work in their own legal twilight. Officially, you're not supposed to ask where the product comes from. Unofficially, everyone asks, and nobody really wants a straight answer. Deliveries arrive at odd hours, discreet as a secret handshake. The inventory comes in, you count it quickly and tuck it away before the next health inspector or a nosy neighbor gets curious. Living in this legal limbo means perfecting your poker face. You learn to answer every question as if you're sitting for a very relaxed oral exam. Is this legal? Customers ask wide-eyed. You smile, nod, and reply in a very Dutch sort of way. That usually satisfies them. And if not, you change the subject to stroopwafels and bicycle locks. The best part, this tenuous, bizarre, and weirdly charming arrangement works most of the time. The police don't really want to shut you down. The locals want you to stick around, and the politicians would rather avoid a scandal than write a new law. You float on, balancing between order and anarchy, legality and legend, keeping your paperwork and your sense of humor close at hand. And if all else fails, just remember in Amsterdam's 1990s coffee shop scene, the safest thing you can do is follow the rules. Mind a cat and never ever run out of coffee. You spot the uniforms outside, and your heart skips a beat. But they're just here for coffee and a chat, not a raid. Still, you've never made a cappuccino this nervously in your life. This is Amsterdam in the 1990s, where law enforcement has mastered the ancient art of chill. The officers outside your coffee shop look less like enforcers of the law and more like extras from a European travel show. Polite smiles, relaxed posture, and always just a little too comfortable in those iconic blue uniforms. Yet, as soon as you see them approaching, every subconscious guilt from your entire life parades before your eyes. The time you jaywalked, the mystery of who really ate the boss's brownie, and that ongoing debate about whether a weed muffin counts as breakfast. They enter with the calm assurance of regulars, nodding at the regulars, waving to Marmalade, the cat, who seems to prefer the company of uniformed officers, and immediately requesting the house blend, no sugar. There's a ritual to this. They'll order coffee. You'll make it with trembling hands. And then, because this is Amsterdam, they'll spend the next 10 minutes debating the merits of bicycle lanes with a table of local retirees. Still, the presence of police in your shop creates a surreal sense of theater. For a brief moment, every customer behaves as if auditioning for innocent civilian. The musical conversations hush, joints vanish into jacket sleeves, and even the most hardened regulars pretend their only vice is a double espresso. You can practically hear the mental math as each person calculates how much eye contact is too much. You do your best to keep things casual. Nice weather, right? You offer as you froth milk with the intensity of a scientist splitting atoms. They nod, and then just when your nerves start to calm, they ask a question that sounds suspiciously official. How's business? You answer honestly. Oh, steady. Bit of a rush. When the rain starts and we're out of almond milk again, they chuckle, sip their coffee, and reassure you they're only here for a break, not a bust. And that's the curious beauty of Dutch tolerance. The police are both enforcers and neighbors. They want to know your name, how your mother's doing, and if you've fixed the squeaky door yet. Sometimes they'll even offer advice on where to get the best stroopwafels or which football club to avoid. If you value your safety on the ride home, you're half expecting them to hand out business cards for their cousin's new bakery. Inevitably, one customer, usually a tourist, panics and whispers, "Can they arrest us for just being here?" You assure them that as long as they're not lighting up outside or ordering a kilo of hash in front of a kindergarten class, they're safe. The police nod in agreement and offer a gentle, "Just don't do anything dumb." Okay, before returning to their coffee. Occasionally, they'll get up to check IDs, making it all seem very official. But even this is done with a smile and an apology. Just part of the job. IDs are flashed, age is confirmed, and all is well. The show continues. The coffee shop resumes its mellow hum, and you finish your cappuccino with a sigh of relief. Once you witnessed a true miracle, an officer helping an elderly customer find her lost cat, while simultaneously explaining Dutch coffee shop laws to a group of befuddled Australians. It's all part of the local flavor. Police who enforce the rules, but do it with the patience of kindergarten teachers and the energy of part-time tour guides. As they leave, the officers thank you for the coffee, pat marmalade on the head, and remind you, always with a wink, to keep the music down after midnight. For a few minutes, the shop feels lighter, as if the entire city has exhaled. You look around and realize this is the only place in the world where the cops can hang out for a coffee, and nobody really worries as long as the cappuccino doesn't come with a side of existential dread. And as you get back to work, you can't help but feel grateful for the strangest, most comforting part of Amsterdam's coffee shop life. Sometimes the police are just here for the coffee. There's always one group who walk in like seasoned professionals, try the special cake, and spend the next hour contemplating the meaning of time. You hand out orange juice, tissues, and a friendly, non-judgmental nod. This is the eternal dance of Amsterdam coffee shop tourism. Travelers from every corner of the globe step inside, radiating bravado, Instagram inspiration, and the faint aroma of hotel shampoo. They're here for the authentic experience. They've read the guidebooks, watched documentaries, and boast about their crazy night in Barcelona. In their minds, they're seasoned explorers of the herbal arts until the first bite of a Dutch space cake turns that confidence into existential curiosity. It always starts the same way. A cluster of bright-eyed backpackers beaming with the smug assurance of people who have Googled how to survive an Amsterdam coffee shop on the flight over. Descend on your counter. Their leader usually steps up, requesting the strongest thing you have, while the rest giggle and clutch laminated maps. You warn them, as you warn all tourists, that edibles work differently, slower, sneakier, and with a sense of humor that could only be described as cosmic irony. They nod as if you've recited an ancient incantation, certain the rules don't apply to them. Within 30 minutes, the transformation begins. The loud one goes quiet. The quiet one stares at the napkin dispenser as if it holds the answers to the universe. And the most confident of all looks up, voice trembling, and asks, "Is it normal for my arms to feel like noodles?" This is when you switch to gentle caretaker mode. You hand out orange juice, the universal antidote, tissues for the surprise wave of emotion that sometimes hits. And you're most reassuring. You're not the first smile. There's no judgment here, only the soft encouragement of someone who's seen this play out 100 times and knows everyone survives eventually. The hour that follows is a crash course in humility. Time stretches, contracts, and occasionally folds in on itself. One member of the group announces that he's never going to blink again. Another swears the music is playing in reverse. You listen patiently to stories about lost love, childhood pets, and why stroopwafels are proof of a benevolent universe. Sometimes someone tries to write poetry on a napkin, profound in the moment, indecipherable the next day. Locals know to steer clear of the tourist corner during these periods. The regulars smirk into their coffee cups, remembering their own first encounters with Dutch edibles, while you gently redirect the group's attention away from the window. No, that's not a secret police van. It's a florist delivery truck. And keep an eye out for anyone attempting to call their mother. Part of the job is managing expectations. You reassure them that no, they're not actually shrinking. And yes, the floor has always been at that angle. You encourage deep breaths, sips of water, and when things get truly wild, a seat near Marmalade, the shop cat, who has a calming influence unmatched by any medical professional. The cat accepts their attention with the weary patience of someone who's been through this 1,000 times and will be through it 1,000 more. Eventually, the group starts to giggle again. Hunger returns, and the color returns to their cheeks. One by one, they vow to never do that again before asking for your recommendation on what to try next time. You see them off with friendly warnings and a promise that in Amsterdam, everyone gets a second chance, usually within the hour. Behind the counter, you shake your head and smile. The tourist effect is as predictable as rain in November. It keeps the job interesting, humbles even the most confident adventurers, and provides endless stories for the regulars. And as you sweep up crumbs and restock orange juice, you remember there's no safer place to learn your limits than a coffee shop, where the only real risk is finding out your reach exceeds your tolerance, and the staff is always there to guide you home. Music is always playing, sometimes 2 tracks at once. Reggae is a must. Eurodance sneaks in during lunch, and every now and then someone brings in a battered acoustic guitar and changes the vibe to campfire chaos. There's a rule, unwritten, unspoken, but universally understood, that a coffee shop without music is just a room full of strangers staring at the floor in each other's shoes. In 1990s Amsterdam, your daily soundtrack sets the tone before you even unlock the door. You begin with the classics. Bob Marley and the Wailers drifting from battered speakers. The mellow bass lines rolling through the smoky haze, creating an atmosphere so laid back that even the city's pigeons seem to waddle in time. Reggae is the lifeblood, woven into the woodwork, softening sharp edges and smoothing over awkward silences between strangers. Tourists expect it. Locals depend on it. You've got at least 3 cassette copies of Legend, all slightly warbled from too many rewinds. Sometimes a track slows down unexpectedly, adding a psychedelic underwater quality that no one seems to mind. Someone always asks, "Who's playing?" as if the answer could possibly be anyone else. But by late morning, as the coffee crowd gives way to the lunch rush, the mood shifts. Eurodance takes the stage. Cheesy synths, thumping bass, lyrics about love and freedom that don't quite make sense, but sound just right over the hum of conversation and clinking cups. It's the sound of the city moving a little faster. The subtle cue for you to prep sandwiches and keep an eye on the tip jar, which somehow always collects more coins during a 2 unlimited song. No limit becomes your internal mantra as you rush to refill sugar bowls and sliced brownies for a table of giggling students. Of course, not all music comes from the speakers. There's always that one customer, part troubadour, part agent of chaos, who brings in a battered acoustic guitar and starts strumming, usually without asking. You spot him coming from a block away. Instrument case covered in stickers, hair in disarray, and eyes that say he's seen too many sunrises. Sometimes he's brilliant, playing a melody that hushes the shop into a peaceful, unified silence. Other times, it's a 12-minute improv solo that sounds like 2 cats negotiating territory over a bowl of soup. You let it slide, mostly because the regulars seem to enjoy the spectacle, and because, let's face it, there's something undeniably Amsterdam about watching an impromptu sing-along breakout over hash brownies. The Dylan Man sometimes joins in, crewing along with the chorus of Knocking on Heaven's Door for the 9th time this week. Marmalade the cat who hates Eurodance but seems indifferent to folk guitar curls up near the amp, occasionally flicking his tail in rhythm. The real magic, though, is how the music binds everyone together. A reggae beat can turn strangers into temporary friends. A Eurodance track can make the shop feel like a party. And even the worst guitar solo gets a round of polite applause. Sometimes the speakers malfunction, and you're left with the sound of rain against the windows and the low hum of conversation. A natural soundtrack that reminds you how lucky you are to work in a place where silence feels just as welcoming as song. There are days when you experiment. A little jazz on a rainy afternoon, some classic rock for the late-night crowd, or a brief flirtation with ambient electronica that everyone agrees is an acquired taste. You keep a stash of mixed apps behind the counter, each one labeled with inside jokes only the staff understands. Rainy day chill, tourist control, hash haze vibes. By evening, as the shop fills with regulars and the sun sets over the canals, you turn the volume down just a notch. The music softens, matching the mellow mood of the room until all that's left is the gentle strum of a guitar, the murmur of voices, and the occasional laugh drifting through the smoke. And you realize as you wipe down the counter and reach for another tape that the real soundtrack of the shop is the endless remix of everyday, different, unpredictable, but always somehow exactly what you need. Closing means finding lighters, coins, and occasionally a half-eaten stroopwafel in places you didn't know existed. The vacuum cleaner is both your best friend and your mortal enemy. The final act of any day in a 1990s Amsterdam coffee shop isn't glamorous or philosophical. It's a battle against gravity, entropy, and whatever mysterious ecosystem has evolved beneath the sofa cushions. The moment the last customer waves goodbye and the open sign flips to closed, you trade your rolling papers for a broom, your tips for a dustpan, and your existential questions for the endless riddle. What exactly is that smell? Step 1. Surface level triage. Mugs are gathered from every table, often sticky from that one regular who insists on using twice as much sugar as any sane person. Ashtrays are stacked precariously, threatening to topple in a tragic mini avalanche of half SM, smoked joints, and toothpicks. You wonder if anyone in the history of the shop has ever actually thrown away a toothpick on purpose, or if they all migrate here from the surrounding cafes by osmosis. Next comes the floor sweep, a deceptively simple task, complicated by the fact that most of the shop is covered in overlapping rugs, each of which seems to be made from a material designed to attract both dust and existential dread. You find coins from at least 4 different countries, none of them Dutch, a few buttons, a pen cap that might be vintage, and a guitar pick with "Property of Dylan Man" written in tiny script. But the real adventure is the couches. Amsterdam coffee shop couches are legendary for their comfort, and equally legendary for what they hide. Every night you steel yourself, reach between the cushions, and conduct the ritual of lost and found. There are always lighters. So many lighters in all colors and sizes, most of which you don't recognize. It's as if the lighters are multiplying, breeding in the dark during the lunch rush. You also find the snack casualties, a half-eaten stroopwafel, a slightly flattened chocolate truffle, and on a truly unlucky day, the remains of a special brownie. Now, a fossilized warning to future generations. Once you discover a note written in 3 languages folded neatly inside a cigarette box, it appeared to be someone's philosophical treatise or maybe just a shopping list. Hard to say. The couches hold secrets, dreams, and probably a spare by key or 2. Then there's the vacuum cleaner. In theory, it should make your job easier. In practice, it's an artifact from the 1970s with a vendetta against you personally. Its cord barely reaches the back room. The bag always overflows at the worst possible moment, and the roar drowns out any lingering thoughts of peace and quiet. Yet, you persist, dragging it from room to room, praying it won't cough up something you'd rather forget if you're lucky. Marmalade the cat supervises your efforts, perched atop the counter with a look that says you missed a spot. Occasionally, he pounces on the vacuum's cord, turning your nightly cleaning into an impromptu obstacle course. You pretend to scold him, but deep down you're just grateful for the company. You finish with the tables, a last wipe down, and maybe a spritz of air freshener that tries valiantly and fails to mask the layered perfume of incense, herbal smoke, and a faint whiff of mystery cheese. You check the bathrooms, replace a roll of toilet paper, and make a mental note to ask the boss about that suspicious drip in the ceiling next time it rains. Finally, you switch off the lights, pause for a pet moment in the quiet, and listen to the soft ticking of the espresso machine cooling down. The shop feels different at night, emptier, softer, almost grateful. The chaos of the day fades, replaced by the anticipation of tomorrow's stories, spills, and discoveries. As you lock the door and step out into the canal-lit street, you realize cleaning up is more than just sweeping floors and gathering mugs. It's a nightly meditation, a chance to find lost treasures, forgive the day's messes, and leave the shop ready for whatever beautiful, unpredictable weirdness tomorrow will bring. Do you think reality is just an idea? Someone asks, chewing thoughtfully on a waffle. You nod wisely because at this point you've heard every existential question at least twice per shift. There's something about 1990s Amsterdam coffee shop at mid-afternoon. A lull that invites the weird, wonderful, and faintly mystical side of human nature to float to the surface. The morning's rush is over. The lunch crowd has wandered back into the city. And what's left behind is a hazy golden hour where conversation gets just a little bit weirder, a little bit deeper, and a lot more recircular. At 3 p.m., the regulars have settled into their favorite seats, drifting through the tail end of a mellow high and the beginning of their third coffee. The air is thick with the scent of incense, burnt toast, and the kind of introspection that only happens when nobody is in a hurry. This is the sacred hour of stoner philosophy, a time when apparently everyone is a philosopher, or at least wants to sound like one. Questions start innocently enough. Do you think we're all just atoms having a shared dream? Or, if you eat a brownie and then think about eating another, did you double your calories? Sometimes it's the big stuff. Does free will exist? Or are we all just following a script written by a cosmic screenwriter who's easily distracted? You respond with a wise smile, the universal language for that's deep, man, and try not to let your eyes glaze over. The Dylan man weighs in from his seat at the counter, explaining the true meaning behind every lyric Bob Dylan ever wrote. Spoiler: it's always about the futility of existence, and divided by, or sandwiches. The art student at the window sketches a diagram to illustrate the paradox of choice, while her friend tries to remember the name of the Greek philosopher who said, "I think, therefore I am," but keeps landing on Aristotle. Or was it Madonna? Every now and then, a tourist, fresh from their first special cake, joins the conversation, launching into a passionate monologue about time being a flat circle or how pigeons might be undercover government agents. The locals listen patiently, the way you might watch a puppy attempt stairs for the first time. Gentle encouragement, knowing laughter, and zero judgment. You've become a connoisseur of these conversations, learning to ride the waves of abstract thought without getting too caught up in the undertow. Some days you play along, contributing your own pseudo-wisdom. Maybe reality is just a collective agreement, like the price of tulips or the definition of cozy. Other times you steer the topic back to safer ground. Who want another round of tea before someone suggests starting a commune, or moving to the woods to grow their own hemp? The shopcat Marmalade occasionally gets roped into these debates, his inscrutable gaze interpreted as silent enlightenment. He gets it, someone says, gesturing at the cat who is in fact contemplating the prospect of fourth lunch. There are always notebooks being filled, poems being half-written, and napkins covered with flowcharts of the meaning of life. You've seen haikus about bicycles, manifestos on the subject of legalizing everything, and once a surprisingly touching essay about why everyone should hug their grandma more often. Outside, the city continues at its usual pace. Trams rattling by, tourists posing by the canal, the distant clatter of a bike bell. But inside, time slows, the world contracts to the size of your little coffee shop, and every question feels both monumental and totally inconsequential. By the time the clock rolls past 4, the haze lifts a little. Customers shake off their afternoon philosophy, collect their things, and promise to think about that one idea for the rest of the week. You clear away the crumb-laden evidence of another deep discussion and smile at the thought that for an hour you played host to the unofficial university of life. And in the end, you realize the answer to most 3 p.m. questions is the same maybe. But first, let's have another stroopwafel. Every afternoon, a lost traveler wanders in, map in hand, searching for their hostel or perhaps just meaning in life. You provide both, usually with a free rolling paper as a bonus. There's a particular rhythm to the mid-afternoon lull in your 1990s Amsterdam coffee shop, a gentle EB of locals, a quiet hum of reggae, and then almost on cue, the arrival of a weary backpacker. Sometimes it's a solo wanderer clutching a wrinkled map and blinking against the sunlight. Other times, It's a trio from Australia arguing about whether Princeton is a place, a street, or just a Dutch word for hopelessly lost. Their hair is mussed, their shoes are muddy, and their faces radiate the purest mix of optimism and jet lag known to humankind. They enter, eyes darting from the colorful menu board to the tapestries on the wall, then to the counter where you stand, equal parts barista, counselor, and unofficial city guide. Their first question is rarely about weed or coffee. Instead, it's essentially, where am I? The answer, more often than not, is that depends. Do you mean philosophically or geographically? You glance at their map, usually dotted with circles, arrows, and hopeful exclamation points. It's been folded and unfolded so many times the corners are threatening to break off. They'll tap a hostel name or scribble a street address. But the map, often torn from a guidebook or picked up in a hostel lobby at 2 a.m., is never quite accurate. Amsterdam's canals curve in playful defiance of straight lines, and your own directions turn into impromptu lessons in city navigation. You see this canal? You want to cross the next two. Turn left at the cheese shop. Then follow your nose to the smell of pancakes. If you end up at the zoo, you've gone too far, unless you like penguins. But directions are only the start. Some travelers need a dose of encouragement. They're far from home, maybe for the first time, with a head full of questions and a wallet full of strange coins. You reassure them that everyone gets lost here, even the locals. You hand over a rolling paper, a secret map shortcut, or a story about the time you spent an hour looking for a street that didn't exist. Still convinced it was a test from the city itself. In between practical tips, you find yourself giving accidental life coaching. Someone confides in you about a breakup or a big decision they can't make, or the overwhelming feeling that maybe they should have just gone to Paris. You listen, nod, and dispense the sort of wisdom only a coffee shop veteran can offer. Sometimes you have to get lost to figure out what you're looking for. And if you still can't find it, there's always another canal, another stroopwafel, and another morning. Your regulars join in, offering advice in a chorus of accents. Dutch, English, German, the universal language of people who've seen too many sunrises. The Dilla man might offer his take. The journey is the destination, unless you miss your train, in which case you'll be spending the night here with us. The student in the corner lends a transit card and a smile. Even Marmalade, the cat, ever the nonchalant bystander, curls up next to the backpack and claims it as a temporary pillow. By the time the traveler leaves, they're equipped with new directions, a caffeine boost, a fresh joint or two, and the confidence to face whatever twisty canal or existential crisis comes next. Sometimes they come back, sometimes not. But they'll remember the kindness, the maps scribbled with arrows, and the shop that felt like home for a brief smoky afternoon. And as the door swings shut and the reggae rolls on, you realize in a city built on water and wanderers, the best thing you can give is not just directions, but a sense that being a little lost is exactly where you're supposed to be. Your tip jar is an international art project. Some customers drop in actual money, others offer a doodle, and at least one leaves behind a perfectly rolled joint for the staff. You're not sure if that's a tip or a trap. There's no part of the Amsterdam coffee shop more revealing or more absurd than the tip jar at the end of a long shift. Planted at the edge of the counter like a slightly desperate houseplant, it starts the day clean and half full of hope. By closing time, it's a glittering mess of coins, scribbled notes, and the occasional mystery object that would confuse even the most determined numismatist. Cash, of course, is the most straightforward. Guilders, francs, marks, pounds, and every other European currency in circulation before the euro arrived like a boring accountant and ruined everyone's pocket change collection. The coins are rarely Dutch. Usually they're remnants from a backpacker's journey through 5 countries in 2 weeks, or the leftover cash from a train ticket refund. You weigh the coins in your hand at the end of the night, mentally converting and then giving up. There's always a Canadian nickel, a Norwegian krone, and a coin so ancient it might actually be Roman. You keep those in a growing museum on a shelf behind the register, just in case someday a customer wants their luck back. But money is only the start. Some customers, especially the artsy types, or those who have clearly been sampling the goods all afternoon, leave tips in more creative forms. There are napkin doodles ranging from impressively detailed sketches of the shop cat Marmalade to abstract representations of the feeling I had after 2 brownies. You've got poems about bicycles, haikus about stroopwafels, and one particularly memorable ode to the girl with the blue backpack. These works of art live taped behind the counter, or when you're feeling especially sentimental inside the pages of the lost and found notebook. Sometimes a regular will leave behind an IOU. Next coffee on me promise, or back in 5 minutes with cash. Honest. You keep these two in a little stack next to the register, and sometimes they actually come back weeks or even months later, as if the city itself delivered them back through the door. Other IUs are more poetic. Owe you a smile and a story. See you next Friday. You never collect, but you always look forward to the stories. Then there's the other category, the non-monetary, not quite legal and slightly confusing tokens of appreciation. Someone once left a tiny carved wooden clock. No explanation, just for good luck. Another time, you found a pressed flower and a paper crane, both tucked inside a tip envelope with "Thank for the vibes" written on the front. And of course, there's the perfectly rolled joint left for the staff, which prompts a brief staff meeting and a careful group decision about who's going to sample it first. You try not to imagine it as a clever experiment by a bored local to see which employee is the most trusting. Of course, tips are sometimes delivered in person with a sheepish grin and a whispered "thank you for being so patient." That's the best kind. Direct, sincere, and coming from someone who clearly just survived a very strong space cake and lived to tell the tale. On slow afternoons, you empty the tip jar onto the counter and take stock, a handful of coins, a drawing of Marmalade in a spacesuit, 2 good for 1 hug coupons, a mystery capsule from a vending machine, and a tiny stone painted to look like a cat's eye. You realize the tip jar isn't just about extra cash. It's a record of every weird, funny, and unexpectedly tender moment that happens in your shop. At the end of each shift, you sort the change, tuck the art away, and leave the rest for the next day's staff to discover. You never know what will show up. A new poem, a lucky charm, or maybe, just maybe, a customer's promise fulfilled. Because in a 1990s Amsterdam coffee shop, tips are less about the money and more about the memories. A little extra proof that kindness, creativity, and a sense of humor are the real currency that keeps the world turning. One lopsided doodle at a time. Lunch is whatever you can grab while refilling the sugar jar. You eat standing up with one eye on the door and the other on the snack shelf. You will absolutely forget what you ate by 4 p.m., such as the sacred ritual of midday refueling in the Amsterdam coffee shop. A chaotic ballet of multitasking and improvisation performed behind the counter, usually with the customer trying to decode the menu in 3 languages and Marmalade the cat circling your ankles in the hope that lunch is code for secret cheese. There is no break room, just a cramped back corner where the coffee machine's gentle hiss provides both ambience and the faint suggestion that you're running a cafe and not a lost and found for sugar packets and napkins. Your choices for lunch range from pre-made sandwich to questionable leftover, both wrapped in wax paper that has somehow managed to absorb the scent of everything in the shop. Coffee, incense, and a faint echo of oregano. If you're lucky, the sandwich filling vaguely matches the description on the wrapper. If not, you become a connoisseur of the culinary mystery. Is that ham or a particularly bold slice of tofu? You'll never know, and honestly, you don't have time to care. Most days you grab a handful of stroopwafels, half a banana someone left on a back shelf, or on a really desperate afternoon, a bag of stale chips that's been haunting the cupboard since Queen's Day. You cram it in between serving customers, answering philosophical questions about the nature of reality and refereeing an argument about whether reggae or techno is better for chilling out. You develop a superhuman ability to chew quietly, nod knowingly, and gesture toward the menu board with a half-eaten roll still in your hand. The key to coffee shop lunch is speed. If you stop moving, someone will ask you for just a quick recommendation, which will spiral into a 20-minute conversation about the best strain for watching clouds or whether it's possible to get too relaxed. So you eat fast, savoring every third bite and giving up on any hope of cutlery. Napkins become your plate, your bib, and occasionally your only defense against marmalade, who will absolutely attempt to swipe the last bit of tuna if you're not careful. The regulars have adapted to your style. They'll slide their order in with a knowing look, whisper, "Don't forget to eat," and offer you a bite of their own snack, a piece of cheese, a triangle of toast, or once a mysterious energy bar that tasted like regret and raw oats. Tourists, on the other hand, stare in fascination as you perform this juggling act, secretly convinced that all Dutch people eat standing up, multitask like Olympic champions, and subsist solely on coffee and caramel waffles. Sometimes you catch a brief, glorious lull. The sun hits the window just right. The shop hums with soft conversation and the sound of a gently strummed guitar, and you manage to take a real honest bite. For a few seconds, it's peaceful. Then the door swings open and you're back in motion, balancing your plate on the espresso machine while you pour tea. Give directions to a lost backpacker and smile, reassuringly at someone who just realized they might have overestimated the special in their brownie. By mid-afternoon, lunch is a distant memory. You'll catch a glimpse of a half-eaten crust or the empty wrapper and wonder if you actually ate or just dreamed it in a haze of hunger and coffee grounds. Either way, it doesn't matter. Dinner is a myth anyway, and there's always another stroopwafel if things get desperate. As you wipe your hands on your apron and check the time, you remind yourself that the real meal isn't what you ate, but the constant flow of conversation, laughter, and a parade of characters that make every day behind the counter feel like its own feast. In this shop, lunch is fleeting, but the memory of a good joke, a shared snack, or a moment of peace between a rush, those last are pacing too. Lifetime. Suddenly, the place is packed. The stereo is skipping. There's a queue for the bathroom, and someone is asking if they can bring their dog inside. You're rolling, pouring, and mediating philosophical debates simultaneously. Welcome to the main event, the afternoon rush. If the morning shift is all sleepy regulars and gentle tourists, the afternoon brings a full-blown circus of humanity straight to your counter. The energy changes on a dime. Conversation bubbles. The air thickens with a mix of incense and anticipation. And the low thump of reggae is briefly overtaken by the wild laughter of someone discovering stroopwafel for the first time. You become a multitasking octopus, each arm assigned a different mission. With one hand, you roll a joint for the group of German students practicing their Dutch by reading a menu aloud. With the other, you're pulling espresso shots and re-explaining the difference between hash and weed to an American couple who want to try everything, but like not get too high. You nod sympathetically as a local poet argues with a tourist about whether Bob Dylan is overrated while pouring hot tea and slicing brownies with the kind of precision usually reserved for brain surgery. The counter is a battlefield. Crumbs from 100 pastries gather in corners. Napkins are refolded and unfolded a dozen times. And somewhere in the chaos, Marmalade the cat weaves between legs, pausing only to swipe at a carelessly dangling headphone cord. Regulars take their favorite seats, expertly dodging the oblivious backpackers camped out in the middle of the room, swapping stories and rolling papers like trading cards. There's always a soundtrack to the madness, sometimes intentional, sometimes the result of two tapes playing at once. The stereo, faithful but temperamental, skips whenever you need it most, cutting from reggae to 3 seconds of Eurodance and back again, as if the coffee shop itself is DJing for its own amusement. A customer offers to fix it, which in 1990s Amsterdam means jabbing at the buttons until it emits a triumphant beep and then resumes exactly where it left off, only slightly louder. As you sprint between tables, you feel the parade of urgent questions. Do you sell vegan brownies? You don't, but you pretend to check. Is this dog allowed inside? As long as it doesn't chase marmalade. Can you break 100 guilder note? You can't. But you take the opportunity to admire the vintage currency and suggest they try the bar next door. There's a request for directions to the Anne Frank house, a philosophical debate about whether or not time is real, and a slightly panicked inquiry from a tourist who just realized the special cake was more special than advertised. The bathroom queue becomes its own micro-society, complete with alliances and whispered negotiations. Someone tries to skip the line by pretending not to speak Dutch, an effort quickly thwarted by the stern but fair intervention of the Dylan man, who has appointed himself unofficial bathroom bouncer. Meanwhile, you dart past with more toilet paper and a silent promise to add plumbing technician to your ever-growing list of job titles. You serve coffee, wipe counters, and gently steer conversations back to safer waters when debates threaten to boil over. When a stray guitar appears, you brace for a sing-along. And when the tempo picks up, you hand out water and orange juice to the group in the corner who have just discovered the meaning of life twice. By the time the sun starts its slow descent, the rush begins to EB. The table's clear. The stereo finally settles on a Marvin Gaye track, and marmalade claims an abandoned backpack as his throne. You collapse behind the counter, take a sip of cold coffee, and exchange knowing glances with your fellow staffers. In the aftermath, you marvel at how the chaos never quite tips into disaster. Instead, it weaves together a tapestry of accents, laughter, spilled sugar, and endless stories. This isn't just a coffee shop. It's a crossroads, a carnival, and a classroom, all rolled into one. And as you catch your breath, you know the best part is yet to come. The quiet, contented hush that follows when everyone is just a little more relaxed, and the only thing left is the soft glow of sunset through the windows. Everyone knows that one customer convinced the government has bugged the pigeons. You reassure him that in Amsterdam, the only thing pigeons are after is your fries. Every 1990s Amsterdam coffee shop has that regular. The one whose mind is a sprawling conspiracy board held together by string, caffeine, and exactly the amount of paranoia you get from smoking slightly more than recommended. Your guy arrives like clockwork, trench coat flapping behind him, even in warm weather, eyes darting between the sky, the canal, and the nearest unsuspecting bird. He usually sits by the window, partly to monitor the situation, partly because that's where the pigeons congregate, and partly because he insists he has to face east for reasons he cannot disclose at this time. He orders the same thing every day, a mild, mellow strain that should, in theory, calm him down. Instead, it seems to fuel him like a philosopher on a tight deadline. Within minutes, he leans in close, lowering his voice to a whisper that can still somehow be heard across the entire shop. They're smarter than we think. He nods toward a pigeon waddling on the sidewalk outside. Look at that one. Too confident. You don't argue. You've learned that logic has no place here, especially at 2 p.m. on a Thursday when his theories peak. So you respond with gentle grounding statements, the customer service equivalent of a warm blanket. I hear you, but I promise the only thing that pigeon wants is to poop on a tourist. He considers this deeply. Then he nods like you've just shared a fragment of ancient wisdom. The other regulars know him well. The Dylan man respects his energy and often joins in, adding his own cryptic commentary. The birds know more than we do. The art student sketches a caricature of the pigeon, labeling it Agent 47. Even Marmalade, the cat, participates, settling into the window in a loaf position, ready to glare at any bird brave enough to land nearby. Tourists, however, find him mesmerizing. There's always someone, usually a jet-lagged backpacker, who mistakes his paranoia for local folklore. They ask him questions like, are the pigeons really that dangerous? Or, is this something we need to report to the embassy? He takes these inquiries very seriously, giving long dramatic pauses, then sweeping answers that leave everyone more confused than before. His best stories, though, begin with the phrase, I wasn't supposed to tell anyone this. He'll explain how pigeons are government spies trained by secret agencies using leftover military funding. He'll insist that he once saw a pigeon wink at him in a knowing way, or that yesterday 3 of them followed him from Dam Square to the supermarket in formation. He provides no proof, but he delivers each detail with the unwavering certainty of a man who has thought about this far too much. You keep the tone friendly and calm. Let's focus on your tea, you suggest, setting down a steaming cup like it's part of a diplomatic negotiation. You offer him a stroopwafel, grounding food. Good for paranoia. Good for anyone who's absolutely sure they're being tailed by birds. He pauses his theories just long enough to enjoy the caramel, which is really all you can hope for. Sometimes his paranoia shifts targets. The trams, the street musicians, the bicycle bells, but the pigeons remain his nemesis. He frequently suggests installing anti-pigeon measures in the shop. Not harmful, he clarifies, just something that disrupts their surveillance. The owner politely declines every time. Yet for all his eccentricities, he's won a pound, the gentlest souls, you know. He always tips. He always asks if Marmalade is having a good day. And he genuinely believes he's protecting the shop from aerial infiltration. On quiet days when the afternoon sun filters in and the shop feels soft and sleepy, he'll confess that maybe the pigeons aren't agents of chaos. But it's better to stay vigilant. When he finally leaves, coat flapping, eyes scanning the rooftops, you watch him go with fondness. You know he'll be back tomorrow, ready to report his latest findings about the Avon Intelligence Network. And honestly, you're grateful. Every coffee shop needs a philosopher, a poet, a skeptic, and yes, a pigeon detective. Without him, the afternoons just wouldn't feel as wonderfully absurd. College students swagger in, boasting about their tolerance, then spend the next 20 minutes in a coughing fit. You serve them tea and quietly record their stories for future entertainment. It's a phenomenon as predictable as rain in Amsterdam. A pack of university students, fueled by bravado and a diet of instant noodles, tumble through the door in a wave of laughter and oversized backpacks. They stake out a table in the corner like conquistadors planting a flag, each trying to outdo the last with tales of weed-fueled exploits that by the sound of them should have landed half of them in the Guinness Book of World Records. There's always a ringleader, the one who spent a semester abroad in California or claims to have basically lived in a head shop back home. He puffs out his chest, examines your menu with the intensity of an Olympic judge, and proclaims, "We'll take the strongest thing you've got." His friends nod, eager to impress, rolling up their sleeves and rolling their eyes at the warnings you give about potency and pacing. You've seen it all before. With a flourish, you hand over a particularly dense pre-roll and a set of instructions. Take it slow. Drink plenty of water. And remember, no one's judging you here. The advice is heard, but not heeded. Within minutes, the first joint is passed around, laughter peaking with every exhale. The first hit is met with exaggerated shrugs and boasts. Not bad. Had I had stronger. But the second and third rounds soon bring a new sound to the shop. The unmistakable world-shaking cough. It starts with a small splutter from the ringleader, then spreads like wildfire down the table. One by one, they surrender, gasping for air, eyes watering, faces beet red. Even Marmalade the cat looks over in judgment, as if to say amateurs. You suppress a smile and begin the real work. Tea service for the overambitious. As you pour, you become a quiet confidant to the humbled students. They offer apologies between coughs, explanations about dry air, or not being used to this Amsterdam stuff. But the bravado has softened into sheepish laughter. You bring over extra napkins, a few slices of orange, and most importantly, your best deadpan reassurance happens to everyone. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. If anything, your nonchalance becomes their comfort blanket. The coughing subsides, and soon the table transforms into a confessional. The Ringler admits he once greened out at a cousin's wedding. Another confesses to losing his shoes at a festival after 3 puffs of something purple. Someone tries to regain composure by telling a story about passing a class while high, but the others are too busy composing haikus about their current suffering. One especially creative soul pens an ode to the cough that echoed through time. Regulars smirk knowingly from their seats, recognizing the timeless cycle of bravado and humility. Occasionally, a kindly local offers unsolicited advice. Breathe through your nose, drink something sweet, which the students receive as if it's ancient wisdom passed down from coffee shop sages. Sometimes you catch a tourist watching the scene unfold, notebook in hand, scribbling observations for a future travel memoir. Chapter 7. Overconfident Students and the Art of Humility. By the end of their visit, the students have swapped swagger for camaraderie. They leave with new respect for Amsterdam's offerings, promising to take it easy next time and tipping generously with a handful of mismatched coins, a doodle, and sometimes, if you're lucky, a playlist recommendation or a half-eaten brownie. You watch them go, already knowing that their experience will become legend among their friends. A tale of survival, a rite of passage, a lesson in the limits of human lungs. The table is littered with teacups and crumpled napkins, but also the faint lingering sense that humility is just another side effect of trying to keep up with Amsterdam. You wipe down the table, stifle your own laugh, and file the day's stories away for future shifts. Because in the world of the 1990s coffee shop, there's nothing quite as comforting as the sound of coughing, laughter, and bravado melting into genuine, joyful humility. After dark, the conversation turns deeper. The reggae gets softer, and suddenly everyone has a theory about what it all means. You listen, you nod, and you make a mental note to never try the super strong blend yourself. As dusk settles over Amsterdam and the glow from the canals takes on that watercolor shimmer, your coffee shop enters its twilight phase. A time when the city outside grows quieter, but the conversations inside bloom into a gentle chaos of ideas. It's as if the dim lights flick a switch in the collective mind. The morning's jokes and afternoon debates about music are replaced by the big questions. Fate, freedom, love, whether pigeons have secret societies. And if reality is truly just a suggestion, the regulars shift gears almost imperceptibly. The Dilla man sets aside his stories and starts riffing on the nature of memory, insisting that every hash brownie comes with a free glimpse into a past life. The student with the perpetual thesis project joins the table by the window, suddenly animated, drawing flowcharts on napkins about parallel universes and the probability of déjà vu. Even Marmalade, the cat, usually only motivated by snacks, becomes a fixture, perched in the center of every circle, regarded by all as an unspoken oracle. Customers speak softer now, voices drifting through the haze in little waves. A pair of old friends recall wild nights on houseboats and muse over lost loves. Someone from out of town tries to explain string theory, using only a breadstick and 2 teaspoons. A couple by the bar holds hands and argues affectionately about whether consciousness is universal or if it's all just the side effect of eating too many special muffins. Sometimes you'll even hear someone quote the menu board like it's ancient wisdom. Earthy, uplifting, perfect for people with opinions about jazz. The music is still reggae, but it's the deeper cuts now. The mellow dub tracks and rare grooves you save for moments like this. The sound drifts under the hum of conversation, the clink of teacups, the soft pop of someone opening a fresh soda. Occasionally, the guitar guy strums a tune low enough not to interrupt, filling the spaces between words with melody and meaning. You play your part as host and gentle guide. You refill mugs, offer an extra slice of pie to anyone teetering on the edge of an existential breakthrough, and supply rolling papers like they're philosophical scrolls. You laugh at the appropriate times, nod wisely at the incomprehensible, and always steer the conversation away from politics before it turns the mood too stormy. Every now and then, someone asks you for your opinion on the nature of time, and you respond with the wisdom of someone who's cleaned up after 2 generations of thinkers. Time moves fastest just after someone says, "We'll only stay for one more." Tourists, if any, wander in, quickly realize they've stumbled into a different world. A place where the rules are looser, the air is heavier, and the sense of connection is real. Even if the conversation is a little surreal, more than one has walked away with a new pen pal, a sketch on a napkin, or a firm belief that they now understand the secret of happiness. Hint. It usually involves stroopwafels. By midnight, the energy has settled into a gentle hum. You dim the lights further, clear away empty mugs, and listen to the fading echoes of laughter and debate. The regulars linger, reluctant to break the spell. Even Marmalade gives a reluctant yawn, stretching like he too doesn't want the night to end. As you lock the door behind the last customer, you realize that these evening hours are what make the coffee shop feel timeless. It's not the menu or the music, or even the haze of incense. It's the people, the questions, the sense that for a little while everyone is in on the same beautiful, ridiculous mystery, and you behind the counter are both witness and participant, grateful for the odd comfort of knowing that you'll get to do it all again tomorrow. Same place, new questions, and maybe, just maybe, a new answer to what it all means. The day ends with the clink of glass jars, the sweep of crumbs, and the gentle sigh of the espresso machine. You reflect on all the odd questions you've been asked, and sweep up the evidence that today even happened. Closing time in a 1990s Amsterdam coffee shop is a ritual of gentle unraveling. The electric buzz of the day softens into the sleepy hum of late-night stragglers sipping the last of their tea, regulars gathering their scarves and stories, and Marmalade the cat circling your feet, knowing treats are imminent. The reggae playlist has looped through Bob Marley twice, and the cassette finally hisses to a stop. You lower the lights, flip the open sign to see you tomorrow, and take a deep breath. One part relief, one part gratitude, and just a hint of leftover incense. First order of business, glass jars. Each is carefully weighed, sealed, and tucked back onto the shelf behind the counter. The day strains reduced to a memory and a few errand crumbs. The tip jar, bulging with guilders, foreign coins, doodles, and IUS is emptied and sorted. The odd treasures of a day's work scattered into their respective places. Cash in the register, art on the back wall, and mystery objects in the growing. What even is this jar under the counter? You begin the cleaning routine, a meditative process, more soothing than tedious if you let your mind wander. Brooms are your trusty sidekicks, their bristles familiar with every warped floorboard and shadowy corner. The dustpan becomes your confessional. In go the sugar packets that never made it to the table, the rolled-up napkin poems, the odd receipt from a customer who swears they saw Prince once, right here in this very seat. Cups are gathered, some still warm, most abandoned in various stages of coffee evolution, black, sweet, or mysteriously greenish from an ill-advised experiment in herbal tea blending. You wash them by hand, grateful for the quiet splash and the chance to replay the day's best moments. You remember the overconfident student's epic coughing fit, the Dylan man's 47th retelling of the same Bob Dylan encounter, the lost backpacker who left with a hand-drawn map and a new outlook on canals. Onto the tables. You wipe away crumbs, erase chalk doodles, and smooth out the menus, making them crisp for tomorrow. There's always something left behind, a stray lighter, a glove, or a folded napkin inscribed with late-night wisdom destined to join the growing collage taped behind the register. It's evidence of connection, laughter, and the kind of thoughtful nonsense that only happens when strangers and friends linger just a little too long. As you mop the floor, you drift through existential cleanup, pondering the day's deepest questions. Was that pigeon watching you? Or was it just hungry? Will you ever understand why people order espresso and then ask for a glass of milk on the side? Is it possible for a cat to judge you more harshly than marmalade? Does it closing time? These, you decide, are mysteries for another day. You check the bathrooms, replace the toilet paper, and marvel at the persistence of the world's stickiest soap dispenser. You switch off the backroom lights, double-check the cash drawer, and scan the shop for any sleeping tourists. Once years ago, you almost locked someone in overnight. Now you're thorough. Marmalade gets his final treat. A scrap of cheese, or sometimes just a warm pat on the head. He purr, satisfied with the day's chaos, the comings and goings and the bounty of unattended snacks. With everything in order, you step outside into the cool Amsterdam night. The street is quieter now, the canals reflecting the city's neon and the moon in equal measure. You lock the door, keys heavy in your hand, and allow yourself a final contented sigh. The day is done, swept up and packed away, leaving only anticipation for the stories, questions, and crumbs tomorrow will bring. Because in the end, closing time isn't just about tidying up. It's about gratitude for the day's beautiful absurdity, the little messes left behind, and the soft, certain promise that in this shop and in this city, something wonderfully unpredictable always waits on the other side of the night. You hop on your bike, heading back past canals and neon-lit windows, feeling a strange sense of accomplishment and an even stranger craving for fries. Amsterdam at night is quiet, gentle, and exactly the right level of weird. The shift is over. The last coffee cup has been washed. The last regular waved off with a sleepy salute, and the cat has left a dream in the window. Now it's your turn to meld into the city, pedaling away from the smoky warmth of the shop into the hush of the Amsterdam night. Your bike, slightly less creaky than this morning, or maybe you're just too tired to notice, waits obediently where you left it. You throw one leg over, adjust your jacket against the chill, and push off, joining the silent parade of nocturnal cyclists. The first breath you take is bracing, a cold sweep of air tinged with the scent of wet bricks, old leaves, and the last traces of incense clinging to your scarf. The city feels freshly rinsed, as if someone pressed reset on all the chaos and commotion. The canals shimmer under the lights, reflecting slashes of neon pink and electric blue from the bars and shop windows that still pulse with life. Every ripple distorts the city's face, turning bridges and boats into impressionist paintings just for you. Pedaling through Amsterdam at night is its own gentle ritual. The clatter of your bike chain is met by the quiet hiss of tires on damp cobblestones. Houseboats rock in the water, sending creaks and thuds into the air. A couple of partygoers arm in arm stumble across a bridge, their laughter bouncing between the canal houses, while further ahead a late-shift baker wheels a crate of fresh bread toward a secret pre-dawn destination. You nod in solidarity, fellow night traveler. Streetlights flicker, sometimes orange, sometimes white, sometimes a mysterious shade in between. You pass the glowing faces of snack bars, promising pita or lalog fries with everything, and your craving grows more acute. An ache that only Dutch fries and too much mayonnaise can cure. You consider stopping, but the rhythm of the ride is hypnotic, and your legs keep turning, weaving around tram tracks and past shop fronts, shuttered for the night. Occasionally, a tourist emerges from the shadows, clutching a map upside down or asking, "Is this the way to the red light district?" You point, offer a smile, and keep rolling, marveling at how a city so wild by day can be so soft and forgiving by night. Even the pigeons have clocked out, replaced by the odd duck gliding through the reflected lights, seemingly immune to all of the city's nonsense. The further you ride, the more the city gives back. A cat watches you from a windowsill, blinking slowly. From an open window comes the muffled sound of a violin, someone's private concert. For a moment, you feel you're the only person awake in the entire city. A lone traveler gliding through a secret world that's part fairy tale, part fever dream. As your legs tire and your mind drifts, you replay the day, the laughter, the philosophical debates, the absurd questions about pigeons and pastry and the meaning of time. Every turn of the petals shakes loose another memory. Faces, stories, snippets of conversation, all mixing with the night air and dissolving into the peace of the journey home. You reach your building, leaning your bike carefully against the rail, listening as the last echoes of the city settle around you. The streets are empty, the water still. Amsterdam at night is both impossibly old and brand new, as if the city remakes itself every evening, ready for whatever adventures tomorrow will bring. You stretch, breathe deeply, and let the odd sense of satisfaction linger. Maybe it's the endorphins. Maybe it's the promise of fries. Or maybe it's just knowing that in this city, even the ride home is an adventure, a gentle coda to a day that was in every sense the perfect amount of weird. Some people come for the weed, others come for the coffee, and a select few come for the cosmic intersection of both. You spend half your shift explaining that special coffee just means extra strong caffeine and not let's see the face of God at 11 a.m. Still, every day someone expects enlightenment in a mug and is mildly disappointed by Dutch filter coffee. It's a running joke among the staff. The Amsterdam coffee shop experience is 1 part cannabis, 1 part caffeine, and 3 parts confusion over what exactly the word coffee means. Here, every morning, as you prime the ancient drip machine, you brace yourself for the parade of customers in pursuit of the perfect cup. Some crave a smooth espresso shot. Some want a mug of hot, bitter Dutch filter brew. And a brave few are on a mythic quest for the legendary special coffee. A phrase that in Amsterdam law hovers somewhere between a local secret and a code word for interdimensional travel. Does the special coffee, make you feel something? Asks a backpacker with hopeful eyes. Glancing around as if you're about to slip him the philosopher's stone, you smile, pour a cup, and clarify for the 100th time that special in this context means strong enough to keep you awake through a conversation about bicycle tires, not an invitation to astral project through the ceiling tiles. Dutch filter coffee, for all its faults, is an institution. It comes out of a battered metal pot with a patina that suggests both wisdom and neglect, and it tastes, depending on the hour, like either bold enlightenment or burnt regret. The locals are fiercely loyal to their brew, sipping it black and undiluted while reading the newspaper and offering you knowing nods. They are baffled by the foreign obsession with foamed milk and flavored syrups. When a tourist requests a cappuccino, you hand them a mug of filter coffee with a shrug, because the espresso machine works only when it feels like it, and the frother is really just a whisk you found in the back cupboard. The tourists, meanwhile, are on an emotional journey. The Americans want bottomless refills and are mystified by the thimble-sized cups. The Italians glare in horror at the drip coffee, whispering prayers to their ancestors. The British, confused but polite, order a tea and then eye your brewing methods with polite suspicion as if the coffee might leap from the pot and stage a revolution. You, the humble barista, play therapist, cultural ambassador, and crisis manager, all while trying to keep the filter basket from clogging with grounds. And then, of course, there's the cosmic intersection. Customers who want to blend caffeine and cannabis, hoping for a magic synergy that turns a rainy afternoon into a moment of transcendence. What pairs well with a light sativa? Someone asks, notebook in hand, ready for your professional guidance. You offer up your best guess. Try the house blend. It's perfect for introspection and a mild existential crisis. and pray they don't decide to invent the espresso joint on your shift. Every so often someone brings in their own strange brewing contraption, a French press, a portable AeroPress, once even a mocha pot, and insists on making their own. You nod, pass over hot water, and marvel at the dedication. Later, they come to you for a special treat, hoping for something that will blend seamlessly with their third cup of homebrew. You caution them gently. Mixing too many experiences is like biking through 3 canals at once. You might get somewhere, but you probably won't remember how. Despite the confusion and the chorus of requests, there's a unique satisfaction in serving coffee in this hazy wonderland. The conversations fueled by caffeine and curiosity range from the history of Dutch colonialism to the latest conspiracy about the pigeons. Mugs clink, laughter rolls, and you realize that coffee, special or not, is just another excuse for people to gather, share a story, and pretend, if only for a moment, that they've discovered the secret to happiness in the bottom of a porcelain cup. And so you brew, pour, and explain day after day, because whether they're here for beans, bud, or that rare collision of both, every customer wants a taste of something special. And in the end, it's not the coffee, but the conversations that really keep everyone awake. Outside, it's raining horizontally again. The entire shop has the humid aroma of wet jeans, damp dog, and that one customer who refuses to acknowledge umbrellas exist. You become an expert at using the shop's ancient radiator to dry socks, rolling papers, and occasionally the spirit of a particularly drenched Australian backpacker. Amsterdam's weather is less a backdrop and more an unpredictable main character in your coffee shop life. The day starts bright enough, maybe even with a glimpse of watery sunshine on the canal. But before your second pot of filter coffee has finished brewing, clouds roll in like grumpy sheep and the sky opens up. Rain in the Netherlands isn't a polite drizzle. It's a full-body experience. It comes at you sideways upward, occasionally from somewhere behind you, always ready to soak whatever patch of optimism you thought you had left. The shop becomes a sanctuary, a steamy oasis with fogged-up windows and the constant patter of raindrops drumming out a percussion line on the glass. Customers stumble in, shaking off water like wet retrievers, trailing puddles and frizz in their wake. Jackets drip from every hook. Scars are wrung out in the bathroom sink. The floor develops a fine sheen of mud, and you become adept at the coffee shop, a dance of mopping, dodging, and preventing anyone from slipping and turning their rainy day into a Dutch hospital visit. Socks, you discover, are the real victims of the Dutch climate. Halfway through the morning, you spot a regular peeling off her soggy woolen socks, wringing them out into a potted plant, which you silently forgive given the weather, and slapping them onto the ancient radiator behind the counter. At first, you're horrified. By your third rainy week, you're joining in. There's an unspoken agreement. The radiator is for everyone. Socks, mittens, even the odd t-shirt get a few moments of steam bath luxury, perfuming the shop with the complicated aroma of warm, slightly herbal laundry. Rolling papers also suffer in this climate. You learn to store them behind the espresso machine or directly on top of the radiator, just warm enough to keep them from turning into papermick, but not so hot they become a fire hazard. There's a special place in your heart for the customer who invents the radiator roll. A perfectly dry, slightly toasted joint crafted while waiting for his jeans to become less of a biohazard. Then there are the tourists woefully unprepared for Dutch meteorology. Someone inevitably enters in flip-flops and a garbage bag poncho, convinced that the rain will probably stop soon. It doesn't. You hand them a mug of hot coffee, loan them a dry towel, and direct them toward the radiator, which has by now achieved the status of a community hearth. You've seen a group of Australians bond over their collectively ruined shoes. A Norwegian offer up a spare pair of socks to a stranger, and a local explain with great gravitas the art of cycling one-handed while wielding an umbrella in gale force winds. You become a weather counselor, dispensing advice as if you were a meteorologist with a specialty in emotional support. You'll dry off eventually, you say, and if not, the sun sets at 4:15 anyway. No one will notice. Sometimes you lead impromptu tutorials on rolling joints in the damp. Hold it over the radiator, not too close. Watch for melting filters. And always you supply an extra paper or two, offered with a knowing smile. By the afternoon, the shop feels like a steamy greenhouse, windows fogged, and laughter echoing through the damp. The rain never really lets up, but neither do you. You have hot drinks, dry napkins, and the occasional pair of dry socks to those who need them most. In a way, the weather brings everyone together. Strangers united in adversity, swapping stories and advice while their shoes steam gently on the heater. As the evening creeps in, the last customers wriggle back into their still damp layers. Resigned, but somehow satisfied, you mop up the puddles, open a window to let out the rainforest humidity, and marvel at the simple power of a well-placed radiator and a cup of coffee to turn even the grayest Dutch day into something warm, weird, and unforgettable. And so, as the neon lights fade over the canals and the last customer stumbles out in search of fries and maybe spiritual meaning, you close up shop on another absurd day in 1990s Amsterdam. Maybe your pockets are full of foreign coins. Maybe your shirt still smells faintly of incense and adventure. Or maybe it's just powdered sugar from a stroopwafel. Either way, you've survived another day. As the unsung hero behind the counter, doing out joints, wisdom, and the occasional cup of coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Tonight, as you settle in, remember the quiet victories, the perfect joint rolled with trembling hands, the regular who left with a smile, and all their belongings, the tourist who didn't cry after the special cake. You navigated Dutch rain, unpredictable law, and conversations that range from the meaning of life to weather pigeons or government agents, all without dropping the tip jar or accidentally setting off the espresso machine. It's easy to romanticize the past, to think maybe you'd thrive in a world with fewer rules and more reggae. But the truth is, it was messy, unpredictable, and just a little bit weird. There were no apps to save you, no delivery service for snacks at 2 a.m., and every shift brought the wild unpredictability of human beings. Well, extremely human. So tonight, as you tuck into your clean bed with central heating, Wi-Fi, and a bathroom that doesn't require exact change, maybe send a quiet thank you to those 90s weed dealers, those patient, pocket-filled philosophers who kept Amsterdam's spirit hazy, welcoming, and gloriously strange. Because history isn't just war and politics and grand inventions. Sometimes it's just people like you doing your best, making others smile, surviving another shift, and finding a little peace in the weirdness. Sleep well, dream easy, and may all your journeys, past or present, end with just the right amount of powdered sugar.